predisposition to certain sins and certain struggles. Right? And the Enneagram is an ancient personality type system where there are 9 personality types, and the Enneagram broken up into 3 triads. First triad, who remembers? Anger triad, which included what? 8, 9, and 1. All right, remember 8 was a challenger. They externalize anger. 9, the peacemaker, forgets about it to avoid conflict. And the perfectionist looks and internalizes it. And they have this ongoing critic in their head. Next triad, which we did last week, was the heart triad. Includes numbers 2, 3, and 4. Good. 2, 3, and 4. 2 was the helper. Good. And the helpers focus on, they look and they sense the need that everybody else has, and they fill that need, and in so doing, they get their sense of self-worth. 3, performer, and what do they revolve around? Achievement, success. Okay, so they find their value through what they achieve, all right? And they have a hard time accessing their emotions and different feelings. 4 is the individual, is also known as a romantic, all right? And these are the people who embellish their feelings. So they really are in touch with what's going on inside them. And through their feelings and experiencing their feelings, they look for uniqueness, and in that they find their sense of self. All right, now we're going to the fear triad. All right, these individuals are driven by fear. All right, now in the fear triad, the 5s externalize it. All right, the 6s internalize it, and the 7s, they forget about it. There's always like one number in each triad that like does the forgetting. All right, so that's what in the fear triad, and fear is the driving force in their lives. Okay, fear is the driving force in their lives. So we're going to talk about the investigator, number 5, right? And I got a good story for the investigator. Okay? Nice little background noise as I'm talking about this story. So I love camping, all right? And I grew up camping, and I used to I would call myself like a beginner to kind of intermediate camper in my ability to, just rough it and know what to have, while camping and how to cook and different things like that. And before this camping trip, I had received my first, cast iron skillet. And what you see there is a cast iron skillet. And I didn't know how to care for cast iron skillets. All right? And so I was telling my camping buddies my woes of taking care of a cast iron skillet, and at one time I made what I wanted, but then I washed it with soap, okay, and then it just kept on rusting. And out of nowhere, in our group, the one person who has never been camping, I was like, well, you gotta reseason it. I was like, no, I season the food inside. No, you gotta reseason the pan. It's like, what do you mean reseason? What do you mean reseason the pan? Then I got a step-by-step thing, instructions on how to reseason your pan. First, you got to soak it in vinegar for about 12, 24 hours. All right, there you go. That's when it gets really exciting. Okay, all right, and then you got to scrub all the rust off. And what you want to do is you want to put it in the oven for a little bit to make sure all the water that you cleaned it with evaporates. And then you want to put olive oil, and you scrape it all around and get a nice thick coat of olive oil all around. You guys want that to play again? Okay? It's really interesting, all right? And, then after you get a layer of olive oil, you're going to put it in the oven and cook it at 375 for about 45 minutes or so. And then you're going to take it out, and then you're going to re-season it again with another layer of olive oil, and you're going to repeat 3 to 4 times. And I'm just like, you've never been camping, right? But yet how do you know this? And I suspect that this individual is a 5, okay? I suspect that this individual is a 5, and this is why. Let's look at some keys to 5s, all right? So, a 5, observation is their safe zone, okay? Now, 5s part of the Fear Triad, they kind of look at everything, and there's a bit of fear in the world. And so one of the ways that they deal with the fear, if they tend to stand on the side and they observe what's going on from afar. Okay? They don't really understand like what life is about to throw at them, and so they stand a bit off and they observe what's going on. So in a new like setting, a 5 is not going to be in the middle of everything. A 5 is going to be on the side looking at everybody. Okay? Not like the performer who's looking at everybody and be like, all right, who's the person I need to meet? But a 5 is looking at everybody and saying like, I got my eye. I'm observing and figuring out the situation. All right? If you're playing Mafia, this person might not say anything for the first couple rounds because they're observing everybody. Okay? Possibly. Every 5 has a different tactic. All right? So they prefer the position of observation. All right? They can appear in a social setting to be a bit of an oddball at times, because they, are anthropologists, if you will, where they're studying, they're trying to gain as much information as possible. All right? But this doesn't mean that 5s aren't social people. 5s are very social people at times. All right? Now, as they're collecting knowledge, okay, from the stance of observation, 5s begin to gain a sense of control. Okay? 5s begin to gain a sense of control. As they've observed, they see what people are saying and doing and what the situation is. They're gaining all this, they're collecting all this information, and what it does is it allows them to have a degree of control on the situation. 5s don't like being caught off guard. Okay? 5s don't like being surprised. And so that's why they sit, because they're afraid that something will happen if they're off guard. So they observe, they collect information, they kind of process all this information until they feel safe enough and they've gained enough control to begin to integrate into the conversation. All right? So for example, because of this, because 5s like to gain information, just like we said, like for a 3 living in America, like it's dangerous because America is like land of opportunity and so much to gain and learn and so much success to be had. Okay, the internet is like that to the 5s, because a 5 like can find access to endless amounts of information. So like if you look at a 5's browser, they're going to have like 20 tabs open, okay? And they're like shuffling between each tab. And if you're having a conversation with them, they'll be able to be like, oh yeah, I was just looking at that, and they'll click on the tab and share their information, right? So 5s they kind of hold on to that knowledge, and the internet can kind of be a black hole of knowledge for them. So on that same note, 5s tend to compartmentalize and look for privacy. All right? So it's similar, all right? The reason why they compartmentalize is because a 5 has a finite amount of energy to make it through their day. Okay? They wake up in the morning, I have this much energy. Okay? I know I have all these tasks, so I'm going to make sure I carry just enough energy to make it through the task. Okay? So it's like when you think back to the airline industry, when fuel prices skyrocketed, okay, what did the airline industry start doing? They started supplying their planes with enough fuel to get to the next destination. Okay? So they were conserved. They were conserving fuel. So 5s are the same thing. They won't extend too much energy in a certain situation or with a group of people because they know they have other things to get to. Right? So they will compartmentalize life. They will be like, for work, I need this much energy. For my spouse, I need this much energy. And for friends, I need this much energy. Right? You begin to go beyond the allotted energy, and a 5 could begin to kind of zone out. They will be there present, and they will blink to make sure, like, they're alive, but a 5 may not be all there. All right? But that's how they conserve energy. And in that, like, a 5, because they kind of think in blocks, all right, they keep their blocks separate. All right? So if you are in a relationship with a 5, the 5 is more likely to know a lot more about you than you are to know about the 5. Okay? So you would like share all these different things about your life, and a 5 will comment and give you like this much information and then turn it back to you. Right? Because privacy is is an important thing for them, and independence is an important thing for them. So they will just give a little, and that's it. So you ask if, like, somebody says, oh, are you gonna, like, come out, we're going out to a movie. No, I'm not gonna go out to a movie because, my mother-in-law just came into town and the kids are a little bit sick, and, like, somebody else might spill a lot of details. You ask a 5, like, you coming out? No. Okay, all right, we'll see you later. That's all you're gonna get. Okay, they're not gonna give you the whole 9 yards. Even if their excuse is good or bad, they're just gonna say, no, I'm not gonna be able to make it. And that's it. All right, so they're compartmentalized in privacy, but that's how they control their fear. Okay, that's how they control their fear. So 5s as children, right? Frequently we'll see 5s as children having overbearing or intrusive parents. Okay, so parents who are just kind of helicopter moms, always like looking at everything like a 5 their child is doing. So a 5, in order to balance that, they will lean towards privacy. Okay, they will lean towards privacy. They're lacking meaningful interaction with their parents. It's just it's always kind of like a control being exuded on the child, and what the child wants is meaningful interaction. And so they'll retreat to their mind in order to keep this intrusive world out. So they tend to be quiet, self-controlled, and they work their feelings out inside. The wounded message that every number receives a wounded message as a child. So for the 5, they're not capable of the demands of a relationship, so they detach. Okay, they detach from relationships, and they deal with everything internally. Okay, they fear that they can't sometimes measure up, so they detach, they deal with everything, they process everything internally. So we think of that, okay, and then we go to the Cinephiles, which is a virus, okay? And commonly, people refer to it as greed. But it's not greed in the sense of they want money. 5s aren't looking for money or a lot of material possessions, okay? What they feel is that there is a demand that life puts on me, okay? And I have a limited amount of supply, okay, for the demands of life, and so there's a gap. That gap produces like a fear of insufficiency in them. And so in order to protect and supplement that fear of insufficiency, the fear of not being able to measure up or deal with all of life, what they do is they preserve and protect internal resources. Okay, they preserve and protect internal resources. So 5s tend to be very intellectual. They think a lot. They gather a lot of information. They compartmentalize life. They keep life private. Okay, in order to make sure that they have what they need to get through life. Okay, they don't want to be caught off guard. So 5s tend to withhold. They withhold sometimes their time, their energy, physical space. They'll withhold personal information. And they will pack themselves in with a whole bunch of knowledge. That's why the 5 who's never gone camping all of a sudden knew how to tell me all the steps to reseasoning a cast iron skillet. Okay? So this is how 5s tend to deal with life. All right? Others find comfort through relationships. 5s find comfort through knowledge. 5s find comfort through knowledge. Okay? They find control and comfort in this unpredictable world through gathering knowledge and making sure that they are prepared. So when you think of that and you go into relationships, when you talk to a 5 and you say, tell me what you feel about the situation, they'll tell you what they think. They'll transpose it, okay? They think they're telling you what they feel, but a lot of times they will tell you what they think about the situation, okay? They'll tell you what they think. So 5s in relationships, they have thick boundaries between them and the other person, right? Because they're conserving energy. There's a lot of fear and unknown on the outside, so let me gain as much knowledge as possible, and let me protect my resources. So they tend to have thick boundaries, and these thick boundaries can often leave their friends or spouses feeling alienated from them. And 5s tend to be very independent in relationships. Okay, 5s, it's a must that they have a degree of independence in a relationship, because that's how they manage their fear. And this can be very difficult for spouses and friends, because a friend, like, at a certain point when the friendship has gone on for so long, may come and be like, I feel like I barely know this person, yet I've known them my whole life. All right? And a spouse could also feel like they just never open up. Okay? Where they really struggle to open up, especially if a 5 is unhealthy. And also 5s will keep you on a need-to-know basis. So the whole example of, like, are you coming to the movie? No, I'm not coming. That's all you need to know. You don't need to know anything else about what's going on inside the life of a 5. So we look at 5s. 5 sitting right here. All right, 5 sitting right here as the investigator. We got 2. There we go. We got 2 wings. We got a 4 wing and a 6 wing to a 5. So a 5 with a 4 wing is a very, very interesting thing, because 5 with a 4 wing, all right, they're more creative, empathetic due to, and they're in touch with the emotions because of a 4, and they tend to have a lot more melancholy going on in life. And remember, melancholy for a 4 is just like nothing has really made the 4 sad, but they just feel and experience life through a bit of like sadness, okay? So, but a 5 with a 6 wing, all right, is somebody who can be more anxious and more cautious and more skeptical about what's going on. And we haven't done the loyalist, and we're going to do the loyalist next, but the loyalist is a worst case scenario thinker. Okay, they will play out every situation and figure out what is going to be the worst. So when you think somebody who's kind of afraid and gathers all this information in order to comfort themselves has a 6 wing, they can be a lot more anxious and guarded at times. So in stress, a 5 is going to pull from the unhealthy, okay, go to the unhealthy side of 7. Another number we haven't done, but we'll do it at the end. So 7, quickly, is an enthusiast. An enthusiast is somebody who needs to avoid pain, all right? But we're going to talk about that a lot more. And so a 5, under stress, will become an unhealthy 7, and in that they'll tend to hold tightly to their things. They'll have more space between other people, and they can also tend to become a bit more organized. But in times of security, they will go to the healthy side. They'll draw from the healthy side of 8, which was our challenger. And what that does to a 5 is it can actually break them out of their shell a little bit more, and they can be more spontaneous and actually more present with those around. They might give out a little bit more information than they normally do when it's a safe place. Okay, when it's a safe place. Alright. Who is a 5 in the Bible? We're gonna get this on. What? BC or AD? Alright. So it's not to go over, alright? Think back to right after the resurrection. Who struggled with uncertainty? Thomas. Okay? Thomas struggled with a lot of uncertainty. Okay? So Thomas is thought to be a 5. Okay? He generally was very skeptical about what was going to happen. There was always a bit of fear of what was going to happen. Not knowing the facts was very difficult for Thomas. All right? He found a lot of security in knowledge, and that knowledge came in touching and seeing Jesus, and that brought a lot of security to him. And when you think of it, like when a 5 has a lot of security, they become more like an 8, okay? Or they pull from the good side of 8, and so that allows them to be outgoing. And Thomas, after finding security, knowing without a doubt that the Lord had risen, became a missionary to India, okay? So Compass is thought to be a 5. So areas for spiritual growth in a 5, they need to practice real-time connection with their emotions. And what this means is like, I thought the way he stated in the book was very nice. He's like, a 5 can experience Christmas on Sunday, but the full weight of the emotions will hit them on Friday. Right? So they will observe Christmas, be like, oh, this was a nice gathering. And then the emotions will kind of catch up because emotions are a bit unpredictable. So with a 5, what they need to do is like kind of take a step back, gather all the information, process all the information, and then they can come back to the table and have that experience. Okay? So a 5 needs to like challenge themselves to practice real-time connection with their emotions. Right? They also need to work towards interdependence and away from self-sufficiency. So 5s tend to think and function like, it is most safe for me to just deal with things. Okay, when I deal with things, I know what's going to happen, but relationships are about interdependence. Okay? And many numbers struggle with interdependence. All right? So a 5 needs to challenge themselves to work towards interdependence, trusting others, and learning to entrust themselves to others, and not just be so self-sufficient. All right? So that's 5s. Let's go to 6s. I don't have a clear example for the 6, so I'm going to take this one straight out of the book. So if you read the book, you know what I'm talking about. So this book was mentioned in the book, and it's a complete worst-case scenario survival handbook. All right? Now this book, you probably can't read the small print. Okay, there, but no, I thought it said something different. But anyway, so this book had a whole bunch of useless things that the common person would not need to know. Things like how to jump out of an airplane, and if your parachute doesn't work, how to still survive. Okay? How to perform an emergency tracheostomy using a pen. All right? How to land a plane having never flown. How to defuse a bomb. All right? This book had, as you can see, it looks like a thick book. This book was littered with all sorts of situations like this. And this book sold over 10 million copies. Okay? This book sold over 10 million copies. And the reason that it sold over 10 million copies is because Enneagram experts suspect that over half of the world's population are loyalists. So the loyalists bought one for themselves, bought one for you, and bought an extra one in case their first copy went bad. Okay? So that's why I think this book did so well, even though it had the most useless information possible. All right? So 6s are worst-case scenario thinkers. Majority of the population fits into being a 6. All right? Now, when we look at 6s, 6s in the Fear Triad have a need for security and consistency. Okay? 6s tend to do well when things are in order, there are plans and there are rules. All right? These provide guidelines for them. And they also provide a bit of comfort because within this plan and within this system, there's probably contingency plans for when things go bad. Okay? So they like things to be in order. All right? And these 6s have a sense where they really value community. Okay? When a 6 is in a community, they have a high, sense to be like, I'm going to be committed to this community, because also in the community they find a bit of safety. Okay? When they're not alone. So what Enneagram experts say, like they tend to be the glues of any community. And they become very loyal to the community, which is where their name is derived from. Right? And this isn't just like church communities. These are communities both big and small, like church and workplace, but also family and friends. They're the ones who want to make sure everybody's together because we're safer when we're together. They desire that connection with people, and they want to love people and to be loved by people. But 6s struggle with analysis paralysis. Okay? And what that means is in both big communities and small communities, the 6s, similar to 9s and 5s, okay, can see both sides of an argument, okay? The thing is, when 6s see both sides of the argument, they are just surprised that you are not as worried as them about what the possible outcomes are. So they're looking at the outcomes, they're like, do you not see how bad this can be? Why are you not freaking out? Like, so this is what's going on, because a 6 has taken the situation, whatever it be, gone like 10 questions beyond everybody else as far as how could this go bad, and they're looking around and be like, why are you not worried? We have something to be worried about, all right? And because of that, they can get stuck, okay? Which is very different. So go back, like 9s, we said like peacemakers, they can see both sides, okay? And they're okay with just seeing both sides. A 5, because they're analytical, they can see both sides, but unlike the 9, a 5 will see both sides, gather all the information, and this is where they part ways with the 9. They will tell you what you should do, how you should do it, and why it's the right thing to do, because they've analyzed it. All right? And they're not afraid of conflict like the 9. So the 9 will be like, hey, I see both sides, I'm staying out of this. 5 is like, I see both sides, this is the right way to go. 6 is, I see both sides, we got to hit the emergency button. All right? So that's what happens with 6s. All right? So 6s, though, is the only number to have kind of 2 subtypes within them. All right? So there's something called a phobic 6 and a counterphobic 6. All right? So phobic 6 is somebody who becomes very loyal to authority and abides by the rules and the regulations, because when I fit into it, then the rules and the regulations and the authority umbrella over me I'm going to find protection in that. Okay? So their fear drives them to couch themselves under authority and abide by things. A counterphobic 6, all right, has fear, they just deal with it differently. Okay, so a counterphobic 6 will actually fear authority. Okay, and they will look out and kind of assess potential fears, but they will want to strike first. Okay, which is very different than phobic 6s. So if you're a 6, what they say is that you can kind of bounce back situation to situation between being phobic and counterphobic. You tend to be a mix, but you generally have 2 ways that you're going to deal with fears around you. You're either going to become phobic, so hide under the rules, regulations, and authority, and become very loyal to them to find your protection, or you're going to sense fear, and you're going to strike first. Okay? So 6s as children, okay? These kids were the ones who heard, don't run with scissors, okay? Don't talk to strangers, never swim alone, and definitely don't swim 30 minutes after eating, or else you're going to drown. And if you stub your toe, you're going to end up with cancer. Like all these ridiculous messages, these like sunk really deep into the mind of the 6s. And they ended up realizing that the world around them is unsafe. Okay, there's an unsafe world. And so, if you can imagine, if you grew up in an Egyptian household and you thought of like all the things your mom said, like this is why like we probably have so many 6s within like Egypt, all right? Because they're just so afraid of all these things, all right? So they learned that the world around them isn't safe and that adults can't be trusted as well. And because of that, okay, they will either deal with it in phobic or counterphobic, ways. But what happens is the lack of trust outward translates into a lack of trust inward. Okay? It's just like a continuation of, I can't trust outside, I can't trust adults, I don't know if I can trust myself. So 6 will often go to somebody else and say, I need your advice. Okay? Because they don't know how to trust themselves. They have a hard time trusting their gut and their instinct because they never, life was never safe for them to build a bit of self-confidence. They always had to be on the defense, and so they struggled to trust themselves. When we look at 6s in the workplace, because of the analysis paralysis, your 6s are often your troubleshooters. Okay, they'll look and be like, okay, this is like all the problems that we face. Here, I've thought about all the potential scenarios on how this could go bad. Here's what I think like we can do. In a meeting, a 6 often is asking the most questions about what's going on, okay? Because they don't want to be caught off guard, so they are trying to calm their fears by asking all these questions. They're the ones why meetings tend to run long, right? Meeting runs long, somebody's asking a question, they're probably a 6. All right? For a 6, thinking in their mind is like doing it. Okay? Thinking about a project that needs to be done is equated to I've done it or I'm doing it. Okay? When in actuality, they've probably done nothing. All right? But they've thought a lot about it. All right? So if you work with a 6 and you have a project that you're on together, do not ask a 6, how's it going? It's going great, and leave it at that. Because you're going to get to the end of the project and be like, how's it going? I haven't done anything. All right? So if you're working with a 6 or you are a 6, thinking about the project doesn't actually make it happen. All right? So check up on your 6s who are in your teams, okay, or at school. Like, they haven't thought about their book report. They haven't even read the book. They just think it's all going to be bad. All right? So the sin of 6s is fear. Now, while fear is what they struggle with, they experience it as anxiety. Okay? So 6s tend to be anxious people. They're always anxious that something is about to happen. Okay? We express fear when something is actually happening. Okay? But when something is always about to happen, we have anxiety. We experience anxiety. Even when things are good and life is going well, a 6 is always like, this is just going to come to an end. Like, somebody's going to pop around the corner and do something, and like this good rhythm that we got, the safety that we're experiencing, like it's all going to come to an end. So they're always afraid that the goodness that is going on is coming to an end, and so fear tends to drive them. And because of this, they are preyed on by society. Society, in so many ways, plays on the fears of 6s, who tend to be the most common number in society. So they prey on marketing tools. Okay? Marketing plays on the fears of 6s. If you do not have this, your life is always going to be missing something. You will be unable to solve this certain situation. Politics plays on fears quite a bit. If you elect this person, like, look at what you're going to deal with. All right? So they engage the 6. Clergy, we're not exempt. We play on the fears of people all the time. Okay? What do? Let's talk about your salvation. What's going to happen at the end of life? Where are you? Where are you going to end up? We can play on the fears. Okay? Let's talk about fire and brimstone. All these things play on the fears of people. News anchors leverage the fears of 6s. All right? No kidding, anxiety has gone through the roof in society. Look at the news. Okay? It's just unbelievable what we see. But let's talk about 6s in relationships. Okay? In relationships, a 6 is always worried that they're going to be blindsided by something in the relationship. So a 6 is always going to be asking, are we okay? Are you okay? Like, I know we kind of like had that little incident, but like, are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. Are you sure you're okay? Like, I'm just worried that we didn't really resolve the issue. Like, you want to talk about it? No, we talked about it for 2 hours yesterday. I don't want to talk about it again. All right? And then 2 weeks later, are you sure you just kind of like act like they have a hard time finding security in relationships? All right, so they're always going to be looking for that encouragement and affirmation that you're okay, you're not going to get up and leave. All right, so 6s really struggle in that. All right, they need frequent reassurance that you're not going to abandon them. And when a 6 starts to spiral out and are so worried that the situation is going to become bad, what they need their friend or spouse to do is to walk them through their worst case scenario thinking. You need to walk them through, why is this so bad? Well, I'm really worried that X is going to happen. Okay, and if X happens, well then if X happens, then you know that A, B, and C, and D is all going to happen too. And it just becomes so ridiculous sometimes that by speaking through it, they realize that their fears are exaggerated and a bit irrational. It's one thing that's going to happen, and they may laugh about it. Or what's going to happen is that they're going to realize that there is a credible threat and there is something to be afraid of. But with your reassurance, they'll realize they will survive. they will be okay. All right? So you need to walk through worst case scenarios with friends and spouses who are 6s. So when we look at 6s in the Enneagram, we're sitting right here. So 5 and a 7 wing. So a 5 wing, that's my 8 dog in the back. Okay? Anyway, so 6s. So 6s, when they have a 5 wing, they can figure out how to navigate their anxieties. So with their anxieties, they're able to think through it a little bit more, to be a little bit more analytical, but a 6 will also be more private about what's going on. They won't like share their fears with everybody. A 6 with a 7 wing, which is an enthusiast, which is interesting because an enthusiast kind of forgets fear and becomes very like outgoing and they love to do different things, very spontaneous. So a 6 with a 7 wing is still driven by fear, but they're open to risks, to taking more risks, and they tend to be a little bit more playful in life. All right, but in stress, a 6 is going to pull from the unhealthy side of 3, okay, which is the performer. So 6 is going to become a workaholic under stress, and they're going to find security in success. They're going to find security in success. So 6s. Now, when they're in a secure place, okay, they will pull from the good side of 9. And what that looks like is they tend to be less prone to anxiety because remember, a 9 forgets about conflict. They don't like conflict. So it helps tone down the anxiety of a 6 when they're in a secure place. I think it's a tough one. Okay? We got 2. 2 saints.
Peter.
Okay, Peter's 1. Very good. The other one we wouldn't know based on him, but in a letter that was written to him. Huh? No? Timothy. Okay? Okay, Timothy and Peter, let's just make it interesting. Who do you think is phobic and who do you think is counterphobic? Remember, counterphobic sees fear and strikes first. Phobic goes under authority. Peter's counterphobic and Timothy is phobic. Good. All right, when we look at Peter and Timothy, let's start with Timothy. We get a second account from him through the letter that St. Paul wrote to Timothy. All right? We knew that Timothy was young in the ministry. He found a lot of comfort in Paul, and Paul gave him a lot of instructions on what to do and how to act and how to conduct himself. Okay? So, kind of from that, we think that Timothy could have been a 6, but a phobic 6 because he went under authority. Peter, counterphobic. He strikes first. Okay? He found safety in authority, okay, but he found safety specifically in Jesus, but he was wary of all other authority, all right? When danger first struck in the Garden of Gethsemane, Peter struck first, okay, cutting off the ear. He was caught in kind of worst case scenario thinking when after Jesus was arrested and he was sitting around the fireplace, like, what if I admit that I know this man? What's going to happen? So he kind of shows like signs of being a 6. All right. So interesting. We have phobic and counterphobic in the Bible. All right. But what does a 6 need? 6 needs to live in the tension of life, and the tension that a 6 struggles with is that life is not safe. Not everybody can be trusted, but despite that, we are safe because of God. And that's a tough tension to live in. To remind yourselves that, like, okay, the world isn't safe, the world's getting bad, but I'm safe. right? So they need to also find self-confidence through their faith. So in finding that God is going to protect, that God is going to be there for them and carry them through, even when the situation is bad, there a 6 can find a little bit more self-confidence in order to make decisions as best as they can. All right? And that's all going to come when they reaffirm that message of we are safe in God. Okay? Or I am safe in God. Even if things get bad, God will be there to help you. Any questions on 6s? One more to go. All right, so the enthusiast. All right. I was in a car ride one time. I couldn't find a picture of me in a car, so I just borrowed this one. Okay? And it was during a really, really difficult season in life. Okay? I was really like down and couldn't make sense of things and really, struggling, and was giving a ride to somebody else in the car, and they got into the car, and it was kind of when everything was like all the incidents were very fresh, and the person just asked like, what's going on? And like kind of shared, everything that had happened, or not everything, but a lot of things that had happened and stuff like that. And from this individual, there was very, very little response. There's very little response. There's very, very little engagement into what's going on. And what I was experiencing, what my family was experiencing, all these different things. We got there, we got out, and literally, like, from that point on, like, the individual never asked about what was going on in my life. There was no follow-up, there was no care to, like, call and say, hey, you shared all these things with me, like, what's going on? What's like, how are you holding up? There's nothing of that. I suspect that individual is an enthusiast. Okay? Is an enthusiast. Because an enthusiast needs to avoid pain. Okay? So a peacemaker need to avoid conflict. An enthusiast need to avoid pain. And the situation that I was sharing was a very painful situation. They didn't know how to navigate the situation. So, it's good, I heard you, I'm moving on. Right? So I'm just saying, keys to 7, they need to avoid pain. In needing to avoid pain, some of the things that they'll do is they will talk themselves out of difficult situations. They're the ones, when the tensions rise, they'll crack a joke. Okay? They'll crack a joke. They're the ones who have most people laughing at funerals. Right? So enthusiasts can do that. So they struggle to deal with sad feelings. They have defense mechanisms to these, to dealing with pain. So 7s, the enthusiasts, are prone to addictions, because addictions, like when you think of pain, and everybody experiences pain, they really struggle to deal and confront pain. So addictions provide a euphoric type of feeling to escape the pain. Also, what they're very good at doing is reframing the situation with a positive spin to it. All right? So like a 6 and a 7 are going to really struggle to see the same situation. A 6 is going to be like, can't you just see how bad this is going to get? And a 7 is going to be like, it's really not that bad if you just kind of look at it from this angle and we do these different things. Like, we're going to get out of this situation right away. So they tend to reframe things. Or the other thing that they will do is they will rationalize why they're moving in a certain direction. So like, they will, in order to escape pain, they will tell myself, like, I need to move in this direction. And everybody around them will be like, we don't think it's a good idea to take this direction, to pursue this avenue. But a 7, in order to escape pain, will rationalize and justify why we're going to move in this direction. Okay? Why we're going to go to the theme park, or why we're going to, on a rainy day. Like, they will rationalize just about anything because it becomes their escape from dealing with pain. And so because enthusiasts like to escape pain, they tend to travel light in life. And what I mean by traveling light in life, they don't like to have heavy commitments. All right? Long-term commitments can be tough, because if it goes bad, it's going to be hard to get out. All right? And so a 7 always is kind of the what's next on the agenda type of person. This was a lot of fun. I've enjoyed this. What's next on the agenda? Let's keep life moving. 7s, as children, when you ask a 7, how was your childhood? They will probably paint a really nice picture of childhood. So much fun. Summers were full of camps. I did all these things. I traveled. Like, that's what childhood to a 7, that's how they perceive it. Right? But if you can kind of settle down to 7 and begin to ask more piercing questions and go a little bit deeper, what you will experience, what you will find, is that the 7 has significant pain in their life, but doesn't like to dwell in the pain, so focuses on the good things that happened as a child. All right? Now, as a 7, they hear the message that you're on your own. That you have to navigate life and figure out life all by yourself. All right? And because life is scary, they figure it out by being very active, spontaneous, and they're always looking for the next best thing. All right? So 7, as children, you tend to be very, busy kids, but they're busy because they're experience-oriented individuals, not achievement-oriented individuals. They're not busy because they're trying to rack up all these like group clubs and certificates and different things like that. That's childhood of a 3, okay? But a childhood of a 7 is like, I did this, I traveled Europe, I da-da-da-da-da-da. They were about the experience of life and the happy experience of life in order to combat the painful things in life. At work, 7s, they're dreamers, they're initiators, they're the ones who think big, and they're the ones who also cast visions. They're really good at casting visions in organizations because they love where the vision is going to take them. Their vision is always not where they are, but where they're going to be, and where you're going to be when it's positive in your mind, I want to work towards there. So 7s can be very, very good vision casters in communities, okay, or at work. Because in the way that they speak, they tell it as a story. All right? They're storytellers. So they will begin to cast a vision, be like, they'll entice you, they'll engage your emotions, they'll get your imagination going, and before you know it, like you are on board where this 7 is going to take you. Okay, where they're going to take the business, where they're going to take the church, all these different things. They're great storytellers. They engage multiple levels of other people in order to move collectively towards that. But, as we were saying, all this is to avoid pain. All this is to avoid pain. And so, a 7's sin is gluttony, but not because they can out-eat you at a buffet. Okay? Their gluttony is for excitement. Their gluttony is to be consistently stimulated by something better because it helps them avoid the pain that is kind of lingering in their life. So they're constantly moving, they have busy calendars, they're adventure seekers, and so on. They always have like a flow of ideas of what's going to come next, and this keeps them very busy in life, and what happens is that the pain that goes unaddressed in their lives eventually over time boils over, okay? And so when we talk about sobriety for a 7, sobriety is about stopping, putting a hold on all the activities, putting a hold on like the next best thing, and to take stock in life and be like, what is going on? I need to slow down. I need to address the issues with my wife. I need to address certain issues with different friends that I have. I need to, take it easy. So when we think of like, as we're kind of rounding out our fear triad, we think 5s, 5, 6, and 7, all dealing with fear. 5 acquires knowledge to deal with fear. That's where they find comfort. 6, worst case scenarios, so they project worst case scenarios. And 7s are just so optimistic that like they don't even deal with fear. Okay? So that's how the 3 deal with fear. When you move on to a relationship with 7s, okay, they struggle with constraints of relationships. Okay? Because they always want to move on to the next thing. Relationships require for us to deal with each other, deal with the pain that happens in relationships, And so oftentimes the 7 in a relationship is moving on to the next thing, okay, because they don't want to deal with the first thing. 7s have to rationalize themselves into relationships, right? So they feel that you are trying to coerce them or justify to them why they should be in a relationship. That feels like you're closing in on them. You're confining them. A 7 has to look at a relationship and see like, this is a good move for me. This is going to be an exciting move for me. I want to be in this relationship. I'm going to be able to do all these different things in the relationship. Therefore, I'm going to commit to this relationship. So they have to think of it from their end, and they have to rationalize why they want to commit to this relationship with you, whether it be a friendship or whether it be a spouse. But if you kind of saying you gotta do it, that's a killer for a 7. They struggle with that because they need to travel light, because when things get messy, they have to move on. So they have to rationalize themselves into relationships. And they're slow to read the warning signs in relationships because they like to avoid pain and they keep things exciting and interesting and high energy. Like the warning signs are around and they keep on ignoring. All right? They're slow to read them. And oftentimes that leads them to deal with more pain than necessary. But a 7 isn't afraid of pain. A 7 can go and deal with the pain of life, but on their own terms. So they don't like it when you say, we have to sit down, we got to talk about it. That's a tough situation for a 7. A 7 would be like, okay, I know we got an issue. I'm going to go and I'm going to deal with it on my own. They'll engage their pain on their own times and with their own time limit on it, because it's a difficult place for them to be there. So wings for a 7 with a 6 wing, the loyalists, they tend to be a little bit more grounded and they give others more time. And a 7 with an 8 wing, this person is competitive, bold, and aggressive in life. All right. Not only do they have the best ideas on what to do, all right, but when you play chess with them, you play ping pong with them, you go bowling, it doesn't matter what it is. They want the excitement of winning, and they're going to do it. They're going to challenge you to the max. Okay, that's what a 7 with an 8 wing looks like. In stress, they will pull from the unhealthy side of 1, the perfectionist, and so they become very pessimistic at life and pessimistic of other people, and they can take on blame. Insecurity, what they'll do is they'll look and they have a better opportunity or better tools to kind of look inside themselves, because a 5, okay, will look inside themselves and assess things, analyze things and stuff. So a 7 with a 5 wing, they're okay with silence, they're okay with solitude. They will wrestle with life's questions a bit easier. Who is a 7? Huh? St. Paul's a 1. St. Paul's, this is the right way to do it. John the Baptist was more of an 8, I think. He was an 8. Solomon. Okay? Solomon. When you think of when Solomon came onto the scene, all right, Solomon comes on to start his reign in a time of peace. So David, his father, had done all the battles, won, settled Jerusalem, and they have grown to be a nation. And the next phase was to build the palace. And so Solomon comes on in a time of prosperity, excitement, and growth for Israel. Right? The temple is being built. There's lots of riches. He's living life very extravagantly. He's got 700 wives, 300 concubines. He's very rich. He's got the Queen of Sheba who's coming up to look at his wisdom. And Solomon, though, despite all these things, really struggled with unpleasant tensions. And the one place that we see unpleasant tensions really coming up is as he surrounded himself with 700 wives and so many concubines, Can you imagine dealing, like what would the home look like? Stressful. How did he deal with it? Oh, you want a temple for your God? Okay, fine, let me go build a temple for your God. Oh, you want a temple for your God? Okay, let me go build a temple for your God. Right? So he's trying to appease all these women, and so he's building different things in order to make them happy. Right? But he missed the warning signs of what it was to all of a sudden have other gods next to God. And that became Solomon's downfall. Okay, that became Solomon's downfall towards the end of his life. So Solomon, we think, could be a sinner. Okay, he is very much on what's the next thing, the temple was the next thing, doing this, like riches, all these different things, but he missed the warning signs. Okay, he missed the warning signs. Heirs for spiritual growth. I'm just going to share this nice quote by Thomas Merton. In a world of tension and breakdown, it is necessary for there to be those who seek to integrate their inner lives, not by avoiding anguish and running away from problems, but by facing them in their naked reality and in their ordinariness. Okay? It's the key message for science. That though pain is a reality of life, it is unavoidable for everybody, and so we need to engage in the pain of life. Okay? That you will survive while engaging. Just like 9s will survive if they face conflicts. 3s will survive if they're not the most successful. Everybody has a message for 9, they will survive. They'll be okay when they enter inside and they deal with the pains of their lives. Okay? God will take care of them, and God is always a good shepherd too. Any questions about Enneagram, any of the numbers, so on? Yes?
But I have a problem with fear being called the deadly sin of six. Because fear is not a sin, but letting it control you is a sin. And I just think that nuance is important, because if people think that their fear is a sin, then it can control them even more. But if they are willing to admit that they fear and to deal with that fear, then it doesn't need to control.
That's a good point, you're right. Fear in itself is not a sin. Okay, fear for the triad, it's a driving force for them. And that's why I think the author also kind of corrects and says what they experience more is a high degree of anxiety, which really can be paralyzing in life. But to say that if you're afraid, you're sinning, no. But if you can let the fear get the best of you, it can really detach you from learning to trust and rely on God. And that will lead you down a different road, and that can lead you to a whole multitude of other challenges. So that's a good point. Fear in itself is not a sin.
I'd like to add to that, because I'm a 6. That one of the challenges about what you're saying is that sometimes they feel that God is either completely in control or God is not in control at all, which kind of goes with the phobic and so
It's interesting.
that's where fear can hurt the 6 as well.
All right. Yeah.
Most of the time I'm glad I'll add to the conversation. I think that fear, though, is the opposite of faith. So,
I was going to
right.
Say that again, sorry?
Fear is the opposite of faith. So, I'm saying, on the boat, why did you fear? You will faith. So, right.
Exactly. Fear can drive us to do different things. Okay, can drive us away from faith. Good. Anybody else want to admit? It's like a self-help group. Father David, I'm a 9. Happy to be here with you all. Sarah?
I would just say, I don't know what I like about it, but I think maybe for Peter, fear was the opposite of faith. But for other people who are not driven by fear as much, fear, plays in all of us, it may be also that there are other things that it's like, that's the point of looking at deadly sin.
Enneagram is very much so figuring out like what lies in the shadow of our minds and in our hearts, and kind of shedding light on them so that we can understand why we do different things that we do, why we respond to life situations in the way that we do. Because it often brings harder things on our plates when we are unaware of what's going on. If you look at the back cover of the book, it says like what you don't know about yourself can hurt you. You know, and I think that's a very, very true statement. What we don't know about ourselves can hurt us. Any last questions? Who found their number this week? Any? All the kids from Sunday school, like, yeah! Anybody find their number this week? All right. And maybe? Okay.
I'm a 5 and an 8, kind of.
5 and 8. So that's. I'm going to say your responses come where people are like, well, I'm this number and I'm that number. And again, what I'm going to challenge you to do is go back and read read the chapter in the book of what you think you are, and then also read what you are. Because we can't be multiple numbers and we can't change our numbers. We are one number. Okay, we are one number. Well, there's the variety, you have different wings, you act in certain ways in different stresses, you know, in life and times of security. So it's about identifying the main driving force behind, you know, what you do. So if you haven't, you know, read the book or read your chapter, it's going to be essential because as we move into community groups, if you're joining the one that's going to be happening in the city, what that is you know, you're going to be looking with the study guide and kind of looking at relationships through the eyes of your number. So it's going to be, you know, important that you know your number, but even if you don't know your number and you've done all the reading and stuff like that, you're still trying to figure out, I think that engaging in a discussion, you know, in community groups is going to help you figure out what your number is and kind of settle it. Because you look at your number through different, like, you know, different concepts within relationships, okay? Like learning to appreciate the good and the bad of who we are, learning to understand like what my motivation is, learning to understand what my fears are in relationships. So the community groups is going to walk through that. So it should be able to help you if you still haven't figured it out, okay? Next week, we're going to do some workshops, okay? I know the retreat is going on, but for those of us who are here, we're going to do a workshop on this. So what the workshop is going to be split into two halves. So the first half, you're going to be sitting in the group, and we're going to just talk about what like that experience was to identify your number, okay, to see what you're like. And then depending on the number of people, we'll hopefully like break up into, you know, and pair up or whatever with other people who are your number, okay, and also kind of talk to them and see that, you know, everybody, all numbers comes in different shapes and sizes and like, you know, presentations, if you will. All right, so that's what next week is going to be. Any last questions? All right, let's stand up and pray. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God, amen.